When I went to go see the FNAF movie on opening night, I couldn't help but feel like, man, this isn't very scary. Wait, oh my god, that's so much better! The horror aspect of the FNAF franchise has been stuck at a long-argued point of contention over the past couple years, but I don't think that's a secret to anybody. From whether you prefer the deep, intimidating ambience of the first game to pissing yourself over the rainbow vomit of Security Breach, none of that matters because the community just knows better. The FNAF-specific offshoot of the nearly decade-old internet trend of analog horror has become the defining example of that specific argument, going on to open up and inspire all kinds of fun avenues for Five Nights at Freddy's fan content, like creepy animatronic show tapes. Gore, 99% of it's just grainy footage of realistic gore. Isn't that unique? Manslaughter isn't gonna document itself, come on, what else am I gonna do with this? And given the typical grounded limitations of the FNAF universe, slotting that into the additionally restrictive analog horror format means that you can only get so versatile before it gets stale or totally ridiculous, which is where I really think the marriage of Five Nights at Freddy's and digital horror potentially works much better. A medium that twists the nostalgic crunch of early PC gaming, online video, and classic web design from the late 90s to the early 2010s. I mean, look at them, those original Click Team games are ripe for the aesthetic, especially having actually released right at the tail end of that era. The FNAF ransomware video and the visually inspired demo release of Graveyard Shift at Freddy's. I've talked a tad bit about the influence FNAF's already had over the digital horror space before, but turns out GSAF wasn't the only instance of influence, go figure. FNAF ransomware transforming into a microgenre of its own, with hundreds of videos and the hundreds of thousands of hits playing with the concept in various ways, even dipping its toes into other gaming IPs. Yeah, FNAF digital horror isn't defined by that niche, but the category of corrupt, surrealist ransomware masquerading as literally anything else does fit the profile of the wider digital horror market, but even at that, it's still a pretty standard example. Digital horror's just got less of a rigidly defined presentation to stick to. Kineopet, Petscop, Lacey's Games, the June Archive and Restoration Project, Crow64. While analog horror does work in more mediums than just video, digital horror is so much broader of a medium by default, and therefore, I'd argue, more native to creative exploration across so many well-produced video series, video games, ARGs. The potential FNAF's got in that ballpark's definitely no different. And while the advent of FNAF ransomware specifically is definitely something I want to gawk at today, with how expansively that trend's branched out and evolved over the past year or so, I want to broaden my horizons a bit first by taking a look at some of the other pieces of FNAF-injected digital horror that have stuck out to me for one reason or another. So, hey, let's kick up some Windows 2000s, load up our floppy disks or whatever the hell, I'm 24, and slap up some internet-situated pants-pissing catalysts in the form of fan projects people have cooked up over the years. No wait, I mean cocked. Yeah, I spelled that correctly. See? ZashQ37 archive. Yeah, I spelled that correctly. Let's get this one out of the way. This cluster shit of a project is the most boiled down spitting image of what it takes to make internet horror today. Am I wrong? The innocent basis of archiving long-lost YouTube videos, add randomly dispersed horror visuals, and oh, some lucky bitch just paid rent with an hour-long video analysis somewhere. I'm shitting blood at the moment. Anyone want to analyze my toilet water? If you've seen any of this shitpost-esque imagery spark up across the internet in recent times, it's cause of this project. A YouTube channel poised as a mere ZashQ37 fan, re-uploading old, nostalgic 2015-era FNAF-centric source filmmaker animations in horrible quality, only for things to go a little wrong. Oh hey, it's Gore again. Which is funny, considering ZashQ37 is a legitimate, still active Five Nights at Freddy's animator. And the original damn videos aren't even gone. Archived all for the sake of unfiction, I suppose, and thank God, where would we be as a society without this guy? This feels like a digital horror series made at gunpoint, 17 video entries to date strung together with sporadically splattered imagery of bog-standard creepy faces. Shit bro, maybe it was made at gunpoint. Red Freddy's in a hostage situation, that's why he's screaming. I would know. Sometimes the re-uploads are innocent enough, and almost to supply a sense of plausible deniability, these occasional entries won't feature any disjointed crazy garbage. This isn't one of them. But I do gotta give props. While the spook factor can be quite subtle at times, like, damn, that's actually a little creepy. Well, fool me once. I don't know, at least the production value, if you want to call it that, does increase as the series progresses. Like, look, Bloodbear's creeping by that pesky third dimension by now. Red Freddy, I don't give a shit. But there's no real narrative here, at least not one that I could find, and if you disagree, you're lying. There's more to conclude about my toilet water. I might have a hemorrhoid. Does Bloodbear? God knows. I don't like this shit. Do you think all of this is just the upload eventing? For real, that's really all the archive seems to be. Just a collection of template-friendly, spontaneous bullshit. It's so blatantly on the nose to the point where my ass can't help but wonder if it's a satirical commentary on the state of cheaply made modern attempts at creepy internet horror series over a genuine go at the same thing. Like seriously, things will be dice and ladders as usual, cut to some unexplainable non sequitur, and resume back to the Kevin MacLeod like nothing happened, and the juxtaposition is genuinely funny. The total lack of context for anything happening, this random God loves you screen that's clearly just a parody of the original FNAF ransomware video, the recurring appearance of some random sods Ryan the Angel Gamer Bonnie OC, and you want me to take this seriously when? While I at least can admit that the corrupted visuals here, ironically, can be quite well executed for what it's worth, and do kind of fit the digital horror medium, aesthetically, it's impossible for me to actually enjoy this without consuming it ironically. The entertainment value coming exclusively from the it being a bit. I seriously doubt that there's anything deeper to it, and I think that's intentional, and I love it for that. Keyword think. I need convincing. Would you chill the hell out? Well, if you ever doubted the inherent irony of ZHQ37 Archive, under the suspiciously high-quality new intro reuploads a description reading, "Deleted video from ZHQ37 thanks to you, help for find old video deleted ZHQ37, and then a Google Drive link to redfreddy.exe, which naturally, why wouldn't I trust?" And hey, digging deeper into that nostalgia factor, we're met with a shitty Slender clone, baby, featuring the one thing the original was missing. Random bullshit that flashes on screen with stock scream and belch sound effects. You're stuck in a poorly replicated Freddy Fazbear's Pizza dressed in poorly cropped shitposts, aiming to seek out the mythical 8 keys, or getting chased by a hemorrhoid. Oh shit, that is what I have. Red Freddy is the Slender Man of redfreddy.exe if the Slender Man was red and screamed instead of blasting static and couldn't teleport and was way louder and didn't stop screaming. Oh my god, shut the fuck up! There are several endings, because of course there are, including one where you press P to piss, leading you to a secret ending video URL. Yeah, this is the perfect cap-off to one of the most well-executed critiques of garbage ARGs I've ever seen. If you really wanted to read into things, maybe the whole project's a manifestation of what the modern state of nostalgia baiting's become or whatever, which is cute that you think that. But as much of a thankless effort as this anonymous work of art is, if you're looking for something that takes itself a tad more seriously, how about puzzle games for children? Agent P-Man 1's Fazbear Toddler Fun may be the answer to that. An investigative series of chopped up screen recordings of You'll Never Guess. Fazbear's Toddler Fun, The Missing Cake Chase, a piece of software existing diegetically as a licensed in-universe minigame collection circa 1997. Appropriate for its era, it largely emulates the look and feel of the kinds of simplistic edutainment games of days gone, almost ripped straight out of a fun and games section of a late 90s Fazbear Entertainment website or something. Though, what the ZHQ37 Archive makes up for in episode count and an affectionate lack of quality, Fazbear Toddler Fun flips on its head with just a 4-part yet delicately crafted miniseries that stands out for the sheer authenticity of it all, while managing to deliver tidbits of a narrative across a myriad of mediums that drip feeds you just enough information to get you to piece together a story without requiring an insane amount of out-of-the-box theorizing. And everything's all peaches and gravy for about the first few minutes of the first episode, only for things to go a little wrong. See, it says it right there. Okay, well, I wouldn't call the series terrifying or anything like that. Sometimes it does click in just the right way, audibly and visually, occasionally creating a strange, surrealist sense of unease that truly did get to me on first watch, with part of that boiling down to just how immersive things get on a base level. I'm talking the minigames, a stop-motion styled skit, a disgustingly authentic flash animation, a full-length short film mimicking Scott Cawthon's actual late 90s production style, an entire virtual music and art studio led by a Mario Teacher's typing-esque dismembered Freddy Fazbear. All of that and more is all material I legitimately believe could have feasibly existed in an alternate universe, warts and all, allowing me to suspend my disbelief enough, and pretty damn effortlessly. Like, seriously, I cannot get over how good some of this stuff looks, and so visually coherent and structurally intact, too. You bitch. Yeah, it's unabashedly another Ghost in the Game situation, par for the course for anything FNAF related, but it never tries to hide that, calling to question what the big reveal at the end of the series truly might be. Our aforementioned Ghost even using the game's pre-established interactive tools to create its own hasty, fresh assets to communicate with the player. And what a goddamn end with its nonchalantly named 50-minute long finale. Untitled video is certainly the most saturated with variety and vibes, which I'd hope it would be at 50 minutes long. Episodes 1 to 3 stand as much briefer, more vanilla-feeling examples of what might constitute as typical digital horror, but at a combined half-hour in length, act as a pretty clean prelude to Fazbear Toddler Fun's piece de resistance, coming through and setting up the general premise through the first 2 entries, and, I don't know, dedicating its third and second longest episode to a full 10-minute animated film for this niche horror web series. Oh, and every time you see quote-unquote gameplay on screen too, yeah, that shit's fully manually edited. No game engine in sight to help streamline things. Makes total sense though, especially with how diverse the presentation ends up getting later on, and especially when things are ultimately just built for the purposes of telling a predetermined core story above anything else. Of which we got a FNAF 4-centric reimagining on our hands that, while I won't spoil, does weave each of the presented mediums into the storytelling in a very fluid way, such that it does pay homage both to the visual variety of early PC gaming and Scott's own trademark art style while keeping creepy, in tandem with the frantic, anxious notes punched post-playthrough into Windows Movie Maker to alert the audience that, yeah, the game impossibly breaking like this ain't normal. The 4 main episodes here seem to come from the perspective of somebody different each time, the group seeming to keep in some kind of contact if we're going by what the captions indicate, and it seems like the Ghost in the Game seems to know him too, the group including one Michael. I'm not spelling this out for you, watch the damn series. Featuring a wholly original soundtrack too, including a scrapped track featuring my shitty FNAF 4 song Springlocked as a motif. I am truly honored. Yeah, it's like they're doing my favorite thing, giving a shit, and while absolutely spearheaded by Agent P-Man 1, Fazbear Toddler Fun's a sincere collaborative passion project, even extending to extra one-off animations in the same style as Safety First. Yeah, I'd seriously recommend this if you're looking for a novel piece of tightly wrapped, neatly tied up, creepy FNAF-themed unfiction. It's great. But hey, if 80 minutes of baby's first point-and-click is a little too much for you, like who has the time? This bastard isn't gonna stay down much longer. He's stealing my molecules and converting them to crypto. Wonderland, created by Bean Poison, is a short and sweet take on yet another video game-centric concept, with a bitch load more meta. Fazbear Toddler Fun focused on an entirely fictitious concept, one of the 2 scrapped edutainment games made for Fazbear Entertainment as a desperate attempt to bring Freddy Fazbear's Pizza back into relevance, entirely alien to FNAF's actual canon. Wonderland has semi-realistic anthro, so it's relatively relevant. Yeah, Silver Parasol, Vanessa, a creepy digitized replica rabbit, all elements specifically integral to Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted, spun into a 10-minute short that arranges those same pieces, not into a VR title, but into the weirdest goddamn pre-rendered CD-ROM experience I've ever come across. To be fair, Help Wanted was meant to exist as an in-universe virtual reality retelling of the controversies of Freddy's after all, specifically in the form of the fictional The Freddy Fazbear Virtual Experience, so the implication that Wonderland exists within a parallel canon consisting of Silver Parasol retroactively getting hired even earlier to produce a kid-friendly romp featuring the likenesses of Fazbear Entertainment's intellectual property before going on to get featured in HW. That's a sick-ass setup for a horror short, you bitch. Seriously, this shit perfectly captures the insanely off-putting nature native to the Y2K edutainment adventure game genre. Nauseatingly saturated environments, uncanny valley NPCs, the Alice in Wonderland-inspired fairy tale-esque stink in the air, ghouls, you name it. We're not here to appreciate how disgusting everything looks though. The basic premise featuring Vanessa, if the name input screen's anything to go by, bringing some ulterior motives to the table with some sexy ass backdoor access to the software. A surprisingly buttery smooth feat if you don't take into account the game already being broken to shit. Things are glitching out constantly. Oh, Spring Bunny's just hitting the slopes. Either way, we're mostly scratching some surface level gameplay here between hopping around stages via the debug menu, a series of events eventually culminating into the chance to get to talk to the big man himself one-on-one in crisp, mind-boggling detail. That's too much detail, back up man. Directed at what seems to be nothing more than a yes-no AI response bot, there is someone else is repeated here, likely in reference to whatever's been messing with the game. I got 50 quid on Ozempic McGee. I don't know, it's the face of an entity of some kind, eerily similar to Spring Bonnie, but not a total match. Oh, there we go. Ew, that's rank. Why are his gums showing? Who shaved his lips off? He's got the visual clarity of a newly decaying corpse. It's disgusting. I love it. Yeah, Afton's virtual consciousness, haunting software developed by Silver Parasol with the facade of a yellow rabbit. Vanessa's unrelenting devotion to basically anything this man says. Everything glitching out to shit. This thing's a fan prequel to Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted, alright? Not being the most in-depth entry to the count, at just 10 minutes long, Wonderland doesn't offer up much, but it clearly still works as a neat basis, giving us a real explanation as to how Afton ended up slipping his way into FNAF's in-universe VR title, and context for Vanessa's earliest acts of loyalty that ended up letting him through. And shit, the immersion factor's here to back it up. The voice acting, finicky animation, the grossly humanoid everything. It's pretty friggin' close to how old, unintentionally creepy CD-ROM crap actually looked. I would know. It was a disease. I don't know, it worked for Fazbear Toddler Fun. Replicating vintage software to a degree this dangerously accurate's just a fun novelty, you factory fresh pussy. It serves the universe of FNAF well, feels like it could have legitimately existed as a licensed video game, and feels conceptually diverse enough to warrant its existence, making all this all the more effective. But in its similarities to everything else, one might call the trio I've looked at so far all their own instances of nostalgia baiting, which could be true, but I don't want to show a political bias. So, hey, what if we took the same basis of Help Wanted and the same flair of twisting it into a piece of digital horror, but turned the time period totally on its head? If Wonderland explored what could have been years prior to the in-universe release of Silver Parasol Games' The Freddy Fazbear Virtual Experience, then Silver Parasol explores an interpretation of what actually was, going behind the scenes of the already established strangeness of the game's development over at the Silver Parasol offices, with a gritty-ass twist. Basically, taking what the fan-dubbed Tape Girl, an ex-employee at Silver Parasol, tells us in the form of tape-shaped collectible audio logs and Help Wanted, Silver Parasol converts into quite a tonally dark 4-part web series. Here we got a specific name for Tape Girl, Gabriella, and an even more specific deviation from the backstory we're given in Help Wanted. Some select elements are carried over and elaborated upon, like the detail of Fazbear Entertainment mistakenly sending over extra data alongside the intended files meant to aid Silver Parasol in the development process that they definitely didn't mean to send. Otherwise, it's a total reinterpretation of events, only really riffing off the central basis of strange paranormal bullshit infecting the code with tangible in-game consequences, which works very well here. There aren't any jump scares, or really anything designed to keep you teetering on the edge of your seat, but it's interesting how nonchalantly everything's presented when what's being presented looks like this. Yummy. These characters and the settings they're in, it's also weird and gross and macabre, shrouded in darkness, making it hard to make out the twisted, misshapen figures so uncomfortably close to you. Seriously, it feels Resident Evil 7 inspired. And it all seems to take place in a very different timeline, where the Freddy Fazbear Virtual Experience goes for a hauntingly classic, eerie vibe, what with the out-of-place lanterns, the faint clair de lune playing in the background of the first episode and the likes. It is oddly archaic compared to vanilla Help Wanted. I think that feeling is partially due in parts to how the presentation of Silver Parasol leans harder into the idea of documentation over an intentionally scary experience, with each episode focusing on cutting ever so much more into the underbelly of a bygone operation to prove malicious activity, simply letting the weirdness speak for itself. At least that's my dissection, and I think it makes for quite the effective gem of a short series. But now you're thinking, chat, I think I've seen this before. Yeah, you have a chat now. And yeah, if you do happen to recognize this specific flavor of guts and blood, ding ding ding, what I don't think it'd shock you to learn is that this was all cooked up by Squeaks the Corgi. That is, Shipwrecked 64 and Polar Dread Squeaks the Corgi, an original horror game with some incredibly effective and tastefully freaky imagery, and one of the only VR FNAF fan games out there, respectively. TLDR, Squeaks knows his game development, and more specifically Unreal Engine, which, for an internet horror series exploring the more technical side of an in-universe Unreal Engine VR game from the extensive first-hand first-hand experience of a game developer set in the FNAF universe that is very much accompanied by tastefully freaky imagery itself? Yeah, I would sure damn hope so. To speak of which is one of the aspects I really like about Silver Parasol. The technical detail behind it. For example, the creepy, alternative looks each of the animatronics have are totally hidden under swappable LOD models. LOD meaning level of detail, involved in a rendering technique to save processing power by flipping to a lower poly version of any given asset, an LOD. Like in Super Mario 64, Mario will switch to a janktastic, chunky-ass model if the camera's far away enough, because at that distance, and especially on fuzzy fucking CRT monitors, the detail between the two models is so indistinguishable that you won't notice and the game won't run like dick. Which does matter when more stuff's being put on screen, so killing the highest visible detail helps level things out to stay running steady. Like similarly with the Spyro the Dragon trilogy on PS1, which actually pioneered the technique for swapping out entire environments, necessary for scoping out where in each level you'd be able to safely glide to. On modern screens, it's pretty obvious what's happening in these specific cases, but still, good examples of the purpose LOD models serve, and a practice still very much in place for optimizing games decades later. The thing is, I don't think there's ever a point in Help Wanted where you're ever far away enough from an enemy to justify the existence of LODs, meaning you'd never trigger their theoretical appearance naturally, therefore making them literally the perfect hiding spot for designs as grotesque as this. It's so cool. They're only uncovered once Gabriella goes looking, with one of the designs actually inspired by a real Help Wanted phenomenon. Beacon Bonnie, a glitched out Bonnie model with completely incorrect texture mapping, referenced also in the name of Bonnie's fictional LOD model here. Okay, let's use that technique to kill this guy. If I push him really far away from the camera, he should start crunching down back into pure crypto and eventually garbage data. That's worse. Largely, Silver Parasol is a simple idea. Just revitalize the story scraps left inside Help Wanted's hidden tapes in video form, right? But it's all the technical and visual flourishes, the live-action connective tissue, the inventive interpretation. The way it's all fleshed out makes it definitely feel like one of the most believable pieces of FNAF-centric unfiction I've ever laid eyes on. Like, I get homegrown Marble Hornets type vibes from stuff like this, it's great. I'm not gonna go into much detail about the actual meat here, considering the footage barely cracks a runtime of over 15 minutes total, so I'll encourage you to go give it a watch on your own if you want, but while there's not a ton to digest, what is here fits into a neat little viewing experience. And yeah, given that it's based on source material that recently released just shy of the new decade, it skirts around the colloquial definition of digital horror technically, if you're gonna be real anal about it, but it's the aesthetic that sells it, right? Cramped 4x3, 480p, that fat-ass watermark, it all feels ripped right out of 2007. It's taking on modern source material, yes, but the way that source material has been modified into something anachronistic makes it feel in line with the definition, I think. The same goes for Wonderland. Squeaks has declared the series cancelled by now, but it's still, surprisingly, a very underground project with a very neat premise I think should be given a little more love. Each episode view counts in the triple digits, okay? That's rubbery. Either way, I feel like that's a nice, varied plate of examples of what you can do with the idea of digital horror, right? Sure, it all varies in length, depth, and medium, and for our purposes is largely FNAF-centric, but I think that for a game series that's been squished and molded and customized in so many other forms, it's refreshing to see these more unique interpretations in the less commonly tackled in the FNAF space digital horror medium compared to something as standardized as analog horror. You really want this to be standardized? But oh my god! FNAF yeah. What about that? It is truly rare to see an entire subgenre of internet horror derived from one singular video, with Fever Dreamer Team's Five Nights at Freddy's ransomware making itself a real thing to behold. Presentation-wise, it was quite unique in combining classic early YouTube-style horror with the native old-school point-and-click look of Five Nights at Freddy's 1 to a degree that was clearly influential. Well, if the ransomware concept worked so well for the first game and all its visual quirks, why don't we try it out with all the others? Said everyone. Seriously, derivative fan stuff sprouted up like nuts, often in the tens, even hundreds of thousands, and sometimes goddamn millions of views for such short video tributes. Were any of them as grippingly haunted as the original? Well, what scares you in a horror setting is a subjective matter that truly depends on the watcher's tolerance of— I'm 24. No, and some of them do roll over into being kind of hilarious. But listen, that's to be expected when there are quite literally hundreds of FNAF ransomware remakes, fan games of remakes, remakes of fan games. You can imagine most of them spiral into being the exact same shit no matter the medium, just like the trend of FNAF-centric analog horror before it. As a result, I don't find a lot of this particularly compelling. But hey, that's just me. I'm 24. And neither did some other bitches, including this guy. May I introduce you to FNAF 1 Remake, a surprisingly creative April Fool's fan game created by Marco Antonio as a satirization of both the flurry of Five Nights at Freddy's 1 remakes that seem to be exceedingly popular, and the FNAF ransomware trends that also often tackled Five Nights at Freddy's 1 as source material. As a result, you get a lot of that clunky, off-kilter visual junk in the way of UI and atmosphere, and recreations of the classic FNAF 1 gang with proportions all mucked up. Thing is, these designs are so, for lack of a more elegant term, appropriately fucking stupid that it's really hard to know if you're meant to take them seriously or not. I mean, you're not, it's a parody. But in any other world, just like a lot of the warped proportions of FNAF ransomware tributes, you would likely have some people respond to Chica's perpetual epic face and smack bib with, "Oh my god, I'm going into cardiac arrest." And you know what? Well, that would be ironic. Slight tangent, but Chica's design is genuinely silly and appealing, and I really like it. No wonder there's multiple pieces of fan art for her. Pretty much all of the designs in this game seem to hit that sweet spot, teetering between looking to be made in pure jest at the ridiculousness of FNAF ransomware as a whole, and attempting to actually evoke that same kind of intentional spooky energy found in the real thing. Like, I'm not saying there isn't tangible appeal to the original idea of a scary, corrupted, fictional piece of malware disguised as everybody's favorite flanderized, if not straight up inherently tame, horror game, Five Nights at Freddy's. Fundamentally, it is a good match, and so oddly unnatural in its presentation given the video concept's origin as a literal dream. But it's when that original concept gets made over and 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 over again that the core idea that made the already flanderized Five Nights at Freddy's 1 video game fresh in this instance makes it flanderized all over and over and over again. So what more can you do than just kind of sit back and laugh at it all in the form of satire? Just keep doing it more. As it turns out, that millions views example I used earlier, the mobile port thing, literally the most popular fan FNAF ransomware video, the derivative fan work that spawned its own entirely unironic subsection of the haunted FNAF mobile port videos. Total parody as well. In the creator Uncle Liam's own words, kind of funny how the idea started from me wanting to make fun of a genre of FNAF slop just for my video to start up another genre of FNAF slop. Oops. They made their own 7-minute April Fool's parody sequel thing too, from what I can only presume is out of spite. Can you even tell the difference between this intentional parody and the actual FNAF ransomware stuff made explicitly to scare you? I'm still struggling. And hey, look, it even took inspiration from Zashku 37 Archive, you remember? Which was also a parody too, apparently. It even came back for a tad under the rebrand Archival, posting a video in which Classic Foxy cracks Toy Foxy's head in after they call him a fag. Canonically, they're allowed to say it. Which, weirdly enough, was the post that tipped me off to the fact that more new footage was put together and animated for the series than I first thought. FNAF, seemingly completely original. I didn't watch Zashku as a kid, so with no basis for comparison, I assumed that anything that wasn't this was ripped straight from the source. No, apparently, half the video endings are straight up different to the originals. Well, I wouldn't say straight. The document detailing the team behind the archives linked in the description, and knowing now who's behind it, with how surprisingly seamlessly it's been done, it doesn't surprise me that this piss-take of a series slots right into the FNAF digital horror space next to Toddler Fun and Call Your Mum the PC's Done respectively, which, despite the direct connections, technically isn't FNAF ransomware, though it may be making fun of it, but it was inspired by old Screamer videos in the same vein as the OG FNAF ransomware being inspired by spooky old internet crap, which it probably was, I assume, probably. But despite all that, no amount of bites and commentary was enough to deter anybody from taking the bait, though of course it wasn't. Zashku 37 Archive was constantly at the center of debates as to whether or not it was real. Five Nights at Freddy's weird mobile port inspired another genre of FNAF slop, and FNAF 1 Remake, despite its very clear intention as a joke, was still treated just as mega seriously as practically every other piece of FNAF ransomware fan work by online creators. Just because at the surface level it looks the part. Nothing wrong with that, of course, get that bag, but for a while it really did seem like anything with a pulse and a snappy 2000s computer interface look was branded as ransomware, even though 9 times out of 10 that's not what it was. Take Banshee, for example, a sick-looking fan game that emulates that aesthetic. Look at all those cool words in the title and thumbnail. Banshee's got nothing to do with any of them. Like, what, am I ransomware now? What, am I atoms turning into pure cryptocurrency? I mean, I guess they are. Oh hey guys, my body's now 99% crypto, so I guess I'm the owner of whatever coin is overtaking me. Here's my opinion on transgender people. I really don't. Wow, oh my god, it works! I crashed crypto and killed this guy, I think, and all it took to do that was talk honestly about the socioeconomic struggles of transgender people. Why was that censored? Basically, the end goal of this whole dissection was to ultimately just present my admiration and appreciation for the fan stuff that seems to extract what makes the original FNAF series work on an aesthetic level and distill it into something new. I've made it very clear what that is. It's the crispy lo-fi look, the hushed backstory, the unorthodox strangeness of the first few ClickTeam games. First few, by the way, FNAF 4. Well, Scott Cawthon couldn't get the crappy-looking perspective shader to work, so that's discounted, and Sister Location doesn't have the source for other reasons, but I'm not gonna get mad about that now. The FNAF ransomware is clearly the most distilled version of that, in its most disgustingly viral form, and it's still ongoing. You got bitches out here making shit I can't even pronounce, or fit comfortably in the video display format, Jesus. It's that relatable childhood fear, ripping something sketchy off the net only to reap what you sow once you've irreversibly fucked up the family computer. Oh shit, I can get FNAF 2 for free? No, that's horse porn. This stuff plays off the tropes of unlicensed flash games and pirated software with a scruffy offness to them, that translated to the same kind of offness often taken advantage of in the horror genre. It's the same reason fabricated beta video game content gets so goddamn popular and why it's usually created with a certain eeriness in mind. It all lives in that same family. Same goes for the whole FNAF 2 Stingray hoax, a supposedly infected FNAF 2 APK that popped up just before the explosion of FNAF ransomware, which basically ended up getting itself cannibalized into the wider ransomware scene as a result, even though it did technically come before. I don't know, the definition of what's deemed digital horror is versatile and ever-evolving, and all it takes is for one more dude to make something wicked interesting to broaden the style just a little more, and I think that's really cool. And shocker, it doesn't have to be tied to FNAF. Agent P-Man 1, creator of Fazbear Toddler Fun, has gone on to produce the multi-channel web series Nebula and Quasar, a fictional PlayStation 2 game mysteriously pulled from shelves, only archived through the collective effort of several fake YouTube uploaders in the form of original tracks from the game, let's plays, insanely corny and over-the-top era-appropriate adverts, even fabricated fan-made comic dubs, animations, and YTPs, going so far as to replicate the full shared internet experience of people bonding over an obscure Y2K video game to a T. It's kind of unbelievable. And it's all pretty disconnected, so link to a playlist containing what I believe to be everything in the description, it's wild. That's not to say that digital horror based on any pre-existing concept is in any sense less valuable. It is extremely fun and novel to see Five Nights at Freddy's interpreted so creatively in ways I seldom see the series explored in. I feel like the core series is very open to interpretation, story, and presentation-wise, and seeing that potential realized through the so malleable medium of digital horror is refreshing as hell. Oh my god. I know, as fucking hilarious as watching a police standoff with the most resilient withered foxy I've ever seen is, something like Wonderland is a tangible reference to an inherently strange, subjectively creepy, and hyper-specific genre of video game. Fazbear Toddler Fun juxtaposes the horrific events of Five Nights at Freddy's 4 with your typical innocent E4Everyone digital activity collection. X Silver Parasol turns the disastrous development cycle of the Freddy Fazbear virtual experience into a scuffed up found footage miniseries. Zajku37 Archive screamed at me a lot but with the serene ambience of toilet humor, but it did scream at me, so it counts. Not being tied down to a certain presentation gave each of these ideas the freedom to go nuts and experiment. If X-Silver Parasol lingered on one still frame a minute and still delivered the exact same narrative, that would make it lame and boring, I think. Hell, as much as I've dunked on it here, even the FNAF analog horror trend's got legs when it lets go of the tropes. The standout example that comes to mind, Nautico 3D's FNAF horror movie series, genuinely being some of the scariest FNAF adjacent media I have ever watched. I am completely deadass. And it's all funky filters, appropriate music choice, warped FNAF models, bitch, anyone can do this. I've got my own take on a FNAF digital horror series I first conceptualized in like late 2019. It's still an idea I'd really like to share and determinedly plan to do so pretty soon now that I actually have the tangible resources to make it work, and it's not something I've particularly seen done before either. If that's you, FNAF-centric or not, get out there and make that shit, dude. We need more creepy, cool art out there in the world, and I think the world of digital horror is a good place to start. That is to say that if the FNAF 2 movie isn't 1 hour and 44 minutes of lo-fi found footage point-and-click screamers, somebody's definitely getting shanked. They kicked me out of the cinema because other people's blood kept getting on me. This is bullshit!